When I turned 18, I got a $20 Walmart gift card. Not even a wrapped present or a cake. Just the card, handed to me like a receipt. My name's Aiden. I'm 27 now, and I still remember how my mom didn't even make eye contact when she gave it to me. My dad was watching a football game on the couch and muttered something like, "Happy birthday, champ," without even looking up. Meanwhile, my younger brother Nathan, who was turning 18 the following year, had already been hinting about his dream car for months, a brand new BMW Coop. He used to scroll through car listings at the dinner table like he was window shopping a life I wasn't allowed to have. I never said anything. Not when I opened that tiny envelope on my birthday and saw the $20 card like some consolation prize. Not when I overheard Mom talking to Aunt Denise about how they were saving for something special for Nathan. Not even when I saw my brother grinning like a movie star the day my parents surprised him with that gleaming new BMW parked in the driveway, complete with a giant red bow, like in those commercials nobody actually believes are real. Except it was real, and it was right there. And I was standing in the front yard with them, like a background extra in someone else's movie. I just smiled, said nothing, and went inside. Growing up, favoritism in our house wasn't a secret. It was practically a family tradition. Nathan was the golden boy. He was the miracle baby after my mom had a miscarriage between us. I heard that phrase more times than I can count. You're lucky to have a brother at all, Aiden. He's our little miracle. What that meant in practice was that Nathan never got grounded, always had the newest gadgets, and somehow escaped every consequence. When he got caught vaping in the school bathroom, boys will be boys. When I got a B+ in math, why aren't you trying harder like Nathan? So I stopped trying. Not with school. I still did well enough to get into a decent college with scholarships, but I stopped trying with them. With family dinners, conversations, holidays. I played my role as the quiet, responsible one. The one who didn't need anything. The one who could handle being forgotten. When Nathan turned 18, the BMW wasn't just a car. It was a ceremony. My mom was crying when they handed him the keys. My dad was patting him on the back like he'd just returned from war. And Nathan? He acted like it was the bare minimum. He said, and I swear I will never forget this, "Finally. Took you guys long enough." They all laughed. I stood in the doorway, half in, half out, like a ghost in my own house. After that, I kept my distance. I focused on school, worked part-time jobs, saved money. I didn't visit much during college, except when I absolutely had to. Every time I came home for a holiday, Nathan had something new. New speakers, new rims, a custom license plate that said N8 Great. He became the kind of guy who posted mirror selfies with his car in the background like it was a trophy. Meanwhile, I was budgeting ramen packets and worrying if I could afford textbooks. And still, I said nothing. It wasn't bitterness. Not exactly. It was more like numbness. You ever get so used to being overlooked that you start to disappear, even to yourself? That's where I lived, just out of frame, watching life happen around me like I didn't have a script. But then something changed. I graduated. Got a job in software engineering, not flashy, but stable. I moved out, rented a small apartment, and started building a life. Quietly. No help. No handouts. Just slow, steady progress. Nathan, on the other hand, didn't go to college. He started community college for a semester, dropped out, and bounced between part-time jobs and pyramid scheme ventures. He always had some business idea or new hustle. None of them stuck. But that car stuck around. He treated it like his firstborn. Always detailing it, upgrading it, posting about it. But he drove it like a maniac. Speeding tickets, parking tickets, dented bumpers. Every few months there was a new story about how someone else messed up his car. I kept my mouth shut, even when my parents complained about how expensive his insurance was getting. They always bailed him out. He's still young, they said. He'll grow out of it. Then came the crash. It was 5 years after he got the car. I was 23, living in my second apartment, working my second job, doing pretty well for myself. I hadn't been home in a while. Then I got a text from my mom. Just a photo of Nathan's BMW. Or what was left of it. Crumpled. Airbags out. Windshield shattered. Apparently, he'd been racing someone at night on a back road. Lost control. Hit a tree. Miraculously, he wasn't seriously injured. Just some bruised ribs and a broken wrist, but the car was totaled. Insurance barely covered anything because of his history. My parents were frantic. "We're just grateful he's okay," they kept saying. I didn't respond. Then, a week later, Nathan called me. First time in ages. He didn't start with hello. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just said, I need a huge favor. I knew what was coming before he said it. His credit was trashed. Too many missed payments, too many overdrafts, maxed out credit cards. He'd been trying to get approved for a new car loan, but no one would touch him without a cosigner. And our parents had already hit their limit after bailing him out so many times. He was desperate. You've got good credit, right? You've got a good job. Come on, man, it's just a formality. I'll make all the payments. I swear. There was a long pause on my end. And that's when I smiled. Not out of joy, not out of spite either, but something cold and clear settled in my chest, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. I remembered my 18th birthday. I remembered the $20 card. I remembered every quiet moment I swallowed instead of speaking up. And I said, why don't you buy it with a gift card? He laughed at first, like it was a joke. Then I hung up. That's when all hell broke loose. I expected the fallout to be bad, but not this bad. Within hours of hanging up on Nathan, my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that went from pleading to guilt-tripping to outright threats of being cut off from the family. My mom left me a long voice message, voice trembling like she was on the verge of tears. Aiden, honey, I know things weren't always equal, but Nathan's in a really tough spot right now. He's your brother. Family means helping each other when it counts. I'm begging you to reconsider. My dad didn't bother with emotional manipulation. He went straight for the cold, hard guilt. You wouldn't even be in your position if it weren't for the values we taught you. Nathan just needs a little help to get back on his feet. Are you really going to let your own brother flounder like this over some ancient grudge? Ancient grudge. That line stuck with me. It wasn't about the car or the gift card or even the years of being the family afterthought. It was the fact that when I finally stood up for myself, just once, they acted like I was the villain. Like I had some moral obligation to keep propping up the same guy who'd been handed everything I never got, only to crash and burn every opportunity. I didn't reply, so they came to me. 2 days later, I was eating lunch on my apartment balcony when I heard the knock. I had a bad feeling before I even opened the door. Sure enough, it was my parents. My mom had that look she always wore when she wanted something. Part guilt, part martyrdom. My dad had his arms crossed like he was here on official business. They didn't ask if they could come in. They just did. We need to talk, Mom said, already scanning my apartment like she was evaluating it for judgment. You've really got a nice place, Dad muttered, almost like an accusation. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. So talk. Mom went first, of course. She always did when they needed something. Sweetheart, we know Nathan's made mistakes. But he's your brother. And he's scared. He needs a car to get to work. What work? I interrupted. Last I heard, he quit his job at the car wash because his crypto startup was taking off. Her smile faltered. Well, yes, but he's applying around. He's really turning over a new leaf. This accident was a wake-up call. He's serious now. He even said he wants to pay you back with interest. I stared at them. Why not co-sign for him yourselves? Dad's jaw tightened. We already tried. Our credit's tied up. We've done everything we could. No, I said. You've done everything for him. Not for me. Mom blinked fast. Aiden, that's not fair. Isn't it? Let me rewind for a second, because this moment didn't just come out of nowhere. It had been building for years. And the deeper I dug into my own memories after they left that day, the more I realized just how much I had buried to keep the peace. I was 10 when Nathan flushed my science project down the toilet because he needed the table space. I was the one who got grounded for yelling at him. I was 13 when he convinced our parents that I stole $50 from Dad's wallet, which I didn't, but they believed him anyway. I was 16 when I got my first job at a grocery store to save for college. Nathan got a PlayStation 5 the following Christmas, because it wasn't fair that Aiden had his own money and Nathan didn't. When I got into college, my parents clapped politely. When Nathan announced he was dropping out of community college to pursue music, they threw him a party with a follow your dreams cake. Every step of my life felt like walking uphill while he had a personal escalator. And now here they were, standing in my apartment, acting like I was the one who needed to make amends. Aiden, my mom said gently, you know we love you just as much. You've always been the strong one. We didn't worry about you because you were so independent. That's not love, I said. That's neglect. That hit her like a slap. My dad stepped in then, bristling. Look, son, We didn't come here to get lectured. We came to ask for your help. Just help your brother get back on his feet. That's what families do. I smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. Families also don't leave one kid to fend for himself while pampering the other like a prince. You're exaggerating. Am I? I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder I'd quietly started compiling after the BMW crash. Screenshots, receipts, everything from the past decade. Let's look at birthdays. 18. Nathan gets a BMW. I get a $20 gift card. 21. Nathan gets a trip to Miami. I get a phone call 3 days later. College graduation. You missed my ceremony, but flew out for Nathan's short film festival. He didn't even finish the film. My mom sank into the couch, silent. My dad looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find a foothold. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I was calm, and that made it worse for them. I'm not angry anymore, I said quietly. I just finally see it for what it is. You picked favorites. And now you're mad that I finally picked me. The silence in the room was deafening. They left not long after that. My mom hugged me stiffly. My dad gave a nod, like he was acknowledging a deal that didn't go through. They didn't say goodbye, but it didn't end there. A few days later, I started getting messages from extended family. Aunt Denise, Uncle Ray, even cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them parroting the same line. He's your brother. You're being selfish. Money isn't everything. Turns out, my parents had made a few calls of their own. They painted me as the cold, successful son who'd abandoned his roots. Nathan was the victim in their version. The poor kid who'd lost everything and just needed one last lifeline. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. Nathan showed up at my work. Yeah, he walked into my office building like it was a casual visit. My receptionist buzzed me. There's a guy here asking for you. Says it's urgent. Nathan something. My stomach dropped. He looked different. His wrist was still in a brace, but it wasn't that. He looked tired, like reality had finally started tapping at his door. I met him in the lobby, arms crossed, keeping my tone even. You shouldn't be here. Look, man, he started. I didn't want it to get this messy. I didn't ask Mom and Dad to go nuclear. I said nothing. He rubbed his face. I screwed up. I know I did. I crashed the car. I maxed out my cards. I messed up my credit. But I'm trying now. I'm applying to real jobs. I even signed up for night classes. I just need a second chance. I stared at him for a long time. This wasn't the arrogant kid who posed in front of his car with fake Gucci. This was someone who'd finally hit a wall. But even then, I couldn't forget. You had a chance, I said. You had every chance. You were handed things I begged for. You wasted them. And now you want me to fix it. I'm not asking you to fix it, he said quickly. Just help. Just co-sign. I'll do the rest. No, I said. And that's when the last mask fell. Nathan's face twisted. You're just jealous. You always were. That's why you're doing this. You think I didn't see how bitter you looked every time I got something you didn't? You were too boring to get any of it. That's why Mom and Dad. I didn't let him finish. I turned and walked away. Didn't yell. Didn't look back. But in that moment, something inside me snapped. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. This wasn't just about a car. Or a loan. Or even family. This was about power. About who held it for the first time. And I was finally holding it. When I left Nathan standing in the lobby, something shifted in me. It wasn't immediate. I didn't walk away with fireworks in my chest or some grand sense of victory. What I felt was quieter, colder, an exhale after holding my breath for years. But underneath that, buried deep, was a knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. A knot made of old guilt, warped family loyalty, and a longing to be seen. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to untangle it. I was letting it go. The fallout came swiftly. My parents stopped talking to me altogether. The daily guilt-tripping texts from Mom turned into cold silence. No good morning messages, no links to dog videos, no passive-aggressive Bible quotes. Just nothing. Dad, who never texted much anyway, blocked me on Facebook. I only found out because a mutual friend mentioned that he'd been posting updates about letting go of negative people and choosing family who chooses you back. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't have to be. At first, I told myself I was fine with it. That this distance was healthy. That I was protecting myself. And in some ways I was. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. Especially at night. I'd come home from work to my little apartment. Quiet, dim, clean, and feel like I'd won a prize no one remembered awarding. I had the job. The stability. The life they said I'd never need help with. And I was alone. I'd scroll through old photos on my phone sometimes, ones I'd taken without thinking. Nathan sticking his tongue out in front of the Christmas tree. Me holding up a birthday cake I'd baked for Mom when I was 16. Dad asleep in his recliner, the dog curled up on his lap. Snapshots of a family I didn't have anymore. Or maybe never really had. It got worse when holidays rolled around. Thanksgiving came and went. No invite. No text. I spent it microwaving mashed potatoes and eating turkey slices off a paper plate. I told myself I didn't care, that I preferred the quiet. But then I saw a tagged Instagram story from my cousin, Nathan, at the dinner table, carving a turkey like he was the man of the house. My seat at the table gone. Not even a mention. Then Christmas. I didn't decorate. Couldn't bring myself to. I didn't shop for anyone. Didn't expect anything either. Still, I kept glancing at the mail slot, half hoping some card would arrive. Nothing came. The day itself was cold and gray. I spent it watching old sitcom reruns, half laughing at jokes I'd already memorized. I ordered Chinese food that arrived late and cold. I tipped the delivery guy double out of sheer loneliness. That night, I broke. I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment, back against the fridge, holding a beer I wasn't even drinking. I just stared at the label, tracing the condensation with my thumb. My chest felt hollow, like I was echoing inside. I kept thinking about that moment in the lobby. About Nathan's words. You're just jealous. Was I? Had I carried so much resentment for so long that I couldn't tell who I was without it? I wanted to call someone. Not to argue. Just to hear a voice that remembered who I was before all this. But my contact list felt foreign. Everyone was connected to them in some way. I couldn't trust anyone not to report back. I couldn't explain what it felt like to be the strong one everyone leaned on, until the weight crushed me. I sat there for a long time. Eventually, I stood up, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. Maybe a distraction, maybe a lifeline. But I ended up on an old folder I hadn't touched in years, my college projects. Notes, half-finished scripts, app ideas. Back when I dreamed of building something of my own. I clicked through them slowly, like flipping pages in an old journal. One file caught my eye. Pulse Planner _V1. It was a productivity tool I'd started building during junior year. Part habit tracker, part mood journal, part goal setter. Clunky and basic, but it had potential. I opened the code and scrolled through. My old logic was messy, but the bones were there. It hit me. Then, I used to dream. Not just survive. That night, I stayed up past 2 a.m. cleaning up the code. No music. No distractions. Just me and my laptop. For the first time in months, my mind wasn't spiraling. I was building. That became my rhythm. Work during the day. Build at night. I poured myself into Pulse Planner like it was oxygen. I gave it a cleaner interface, added analytics, connected it with wearable integrations. Slowly, it became more than a project. It became mine. I wasn't trying to prove anything. Not to Nathan. Not to my parents. Just to myself. Over time, the numbness eased. I started running again. Not far, just a few miles in the morning before work. Cleared my head. I signed up for therapy, something I'd resisted for too long. The first session, I barely spoke. But the second, I cracked open a little. By the fifth, I was unpacking things I didn't know I still carried. Shame. Abandonment. The aching desire to be chosen. My therapist, a calm older guy named Mark, said something that stuck with me. You spent your whole life trying not to rock the boat. But the boat was already sinking. You were just trying not to get blamed for the leak. It hit me like a punch. Because he was right. The more I looked back, the more I realized how many times I'd minimized myself to make others comfortable. How often I'd swallowed anger just to keep the peace. I wasn't angry at Nathan for getting the car. I was angry that I was taught not to ask for anything. That being quiet and selfless was supposed to be enough. That when it wasn't, they shrugged and said, well, you're the strong one. I wasn't weak for finally saying no. I was healing. And the more I healed, the more things started falling into place. Pulse Planner picked up traction on a small productivity subreddit. Someone posted a screenshot and called it clean, focused, and actually useful. That post got traction. A few hundred upvotes. Then 1,000. I made a landing page, offered a beta sign-up. Within a week, I had over 600 sign-ups. Not much, but enough to see potential. I bought the domain, polished the branding, and turned it into a side hustle. I wasn't making real money yet, but it wasn't about that. It was about building something that reflected who I'd become, not who I was trying to appease. And then, out of nowhere, I got a text. From Nathan. Hey, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. It's not about the car. It's important. I stared at the message for a long time. The old me would have deleted it, blocked him, walked away. But I wasn't the old me. I replied, what is it? He said he'd rather talk in person. So I agreed to meet. Not because I wanted to reconnect. Because I needed to see what he looked like on the other side of rock bottom. I met Nathan in a quiet corner booth of a half-empty diner downtown. He'd picked the place, probably because it was neutral ground. Not our childhood home, not my apartment, and certainly not Mom and Dad's house. Just a faded vinyl booth with a sticky table and a buzzing overhead light that flickered every few seconds like it was trying to stay awake. Appropriate, I thought. Everything felt on edge. He looked tired, really tired. His hoodie was wrinkled, and his beard was patchy like he hadn't cared enough to shave properly. There was a deep cut on his cheek that had almost healed, but not quite, and his left wrist was still in the brace. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was in his eyes. Nathan always had this smug, untouchable gleam about him, like the world was just a backdrop to his personal movie. That gleam was gone. I know I messed up, he said, skipping hello. I didn't respond. Just waited. I wanted to tell you. I think I finally get it now. What you've been trying to say all these years. About how unfair everything was. That got my attention. He looked down at the table. You know what the worst part was about wrecking that car? He gave a dry laugh. It wasn't the crash. Or the pain. It was the look on Mom's face when she picked me up from the hospital. She wasn't scared. She wasn't sad. She just looked tired. Like she didn't have anything left for me. I stayed silent. Nathan glanced at me. She told me I should call you. Said you'd be able to help. That you always helped. I snorted. I don't recall helping you very much. He didn't argue. There was a long pause before he finally said, you don't have to forgive me. But I wanted you to know you were right. I didn't earn any of it. I just expected it. And now that it's gone, I don't know who I am without it. There was something honest in that moment. Raw. Like the last thread of ego had finally snapped, and he was just standing there, exposed and shivering in the cold reality of adulthood. But then he said something that turned everything on its head. I found something, he said, pulling out a folded piece of paper from his hoodie pocket. Something Mom and Dad didn't want either of us to see. I raised an eyebrow. What is it? He pushed it across the table. An old letter from Grandma. She left something in her will. But it never got to you. I unfolded the paper slowly. It was a copy of a handwritten note. Faded, but legible. Dated 6 years ago. Aiden, you've always reminded me of your grandfather. Quiet, kind, and far too humble for your own good. I know your parents have always favored Nathan. I tried to talk to them about it, but they wouldn't listen. That's why I've made arrangements. I left something for you. Not just money, but land. The cabin. The one by the lake your grandfather loved. It's yours now. I told the lawyer to make sure of it. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Love, Grandma. I stared at the paper, my brain barely registering the words. The cabin? You're lying. I said automatically, my voice cold. Nathan shook his head. I swear I'm not. I found this in a box of Mom's old papers when I was staying at the house. I think they hid it from you. I don't know if they ever told the lawyer you were supposed to inherit anything. The gears started turning in my head. I hadn't been at the reading of Grandma's will. I'd been away at college and only got a call afterward. Mom telling me that everything was split evenly, but most of it had gone to funeral expenses and helping Nathan get settled. I didn't question it. I was used to scraps. But now there was this. The cabin by the lake wasn't just sentimental. It was valuable. A real estate gem. The kind of place that people rented for premium weekend getaways. My grandfather had built it himself back in the 70s and maintained it meticulously. When I was a kid, it was the one place I ever felt close to him. We'd fish off the dock, chop wood, play cards by the fireplace. He once told me that place would be mine someday. And now I knew he meant it. I looked back at Nathan. Why are you telling me this? He hesitated. Because I wanted to make it right. And maybe because I hoped you'd use it better than they did. I know they tried to sell it. I heard them talking about it last year, but I think the paperwork was never fully in their name. If you go to the county office. I didn't let him finish. Because in that moment, I wasn't sitting in a diner with my brother anymore. I was sitting at the threshold of something big. Something just. And for the first time, I wasn't reacting, I was planning. The next morning, I called in sick. Then I drove 2 hours out to the county records office in the small town near the lake. The place smelled like dust and old linoleum, and the clerk at the front desk looked like she hadn't updated her hairstyle since 1995. But she was kind, helpful, and after about 40 minutes of digging through property transfer documents and notarized forms, she handed me a file. The cabin was never transferred to my parents' name. It was still in my grandmother's. And in her will, attached, sealed, and signed, it clearly stated that the property was to be left to me. Not to be sold, not to be split, solely and entirely to me. It should have passed into my name automatically, but only if the family submitted the final documentation. Which, of course, they never did. They'd buried it. And now I had the proof. By law, all I had to do was file the claim with the probate court, along with the letter and a petition to reopen the estate for property transfer. It would take a few weeks, maybe longer, but it would work. And when it did, that cabin wouldn't just be a quiet piece of family memory. It would be leverage. Because if they tried to sell it again, or claimed I was stealing, I'd have the original will and the county's record on my side. Ironclad. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. I filed the court documents, hired a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Lila who didn't flinch when I said, "They've been hiding this from me for 6 years," and started planning my next move. I didn't tell Nathan what I was doing. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I started looking deeper. Into my parents' finances. Into Nathan's bankruptcy filings. Into the tangled mess of personal loans and co-signed credit cards I had never been involved in, but which my name had mysteriously popped up on once or twice, years ago. And the more I found, the angrier I got. Turns out, when I was 19, my parents used my social security number to apply for a store credit card in my name. They never spent much, just a couple $100s, but it was fraud. And it had quietly dinged my credit until I noticed and fixed it. I'd assumed it was a clerical error back then. Now I knew better. They hadn't just favored Nathan. They'd used me. Quietly. Safely. Because I never made noise. That was about to change. The final piece came together when I reached out to a local real estate developer who'd been eyeing the lakefront area. A polite man in his 40s with a clean-cut smile and a firm handshake. When I told him who I was, and that I'd soon hold full ownership of one of the last untouched properties on the lake, he lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "I'm not looking to sell," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" "Because I want you to make an offer. On paper. A public one." He frowned, confused. "I'm not going to accept it. But I want to document it. Something my parents can see and panic over." His eyes sparkled with sudden understanding. I get it. You want them to think you're going to sell it out from under them." "Exactly." He grinned. "Revenge." I smiled back. "Justice." And just like that, the offer was drawn up. A formal, public bid filed through the county, tied to a developer's interest in turning the cabin into a historical lodge or boutique Airbnb. It wasn't binding, but it was real enough to get noticed. I made sure of it, because I knew the moment it hit the county bulletin board, my parents would find out. And they'd realize just how much they'd underestimated the quiet son. The one who didn't say anything. Until now. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't have to wait long for the fireworks. Exactly 9 days after the real estate developer posted the public offer for the cabin on the county board, just as I planned, I got a call from a number I hadn't saved. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. And another. For missed calls in one morning. All from Mom. Finally, my phone buzzed with a message. "What are you doing? Call me right now. Do not sell that property." The satisfying part wasn't the all caps yelling. It was the fact that for once, they were scrambling, not me. I let the messages pile up. They came in waves. First panic, then guilt, then threats. My dad even tried the old, "You're making a huge mistake, son" routine. But the best one? The voicemail where he said, that cabin was meant for family, not profit. As if I was the one who buried a handwritten letter from Grandma for 6 years. As if they hadn't tried to quietly sell the place behind my back just last year. When I didn't respond, they upped the pressure. Uncle Ray called me next. Said he was concerned about the family falling apart. Aunt Denise chimed in, saying, "Honey, your parents are older now, and stress like this isn't good for them." One cousin even offered to mediate a family discussion like I was a misbehaving tenant and not the legal owner of a property my grandparents left to me. But I didn't budge. Then came the final play. Nathan. He showed up at my apartment again. I didn't let him inside this time. We talked at the door. He looked more put together than last time. Clean clothes, a decent haircut, less of that sunken desperation in his face. I told them the truth, he said quietly. That you found the letter. That you're the legal heir. They're freaking out. I know, I said. That was the point. He gave a small, bitter laugh. They're saying they'll contest it. That grandma was confused. That you forged something. I didn't, I said simply. And if they try, I've got the lawyer, the original will, the county office records, and grandma's lawyer's signature confirming everything. Let them burn money on a losing battle. Nathan looked at me for a long moment. You're really going to go through with it? I leaned against the doorframe. No, I'm not going to sell the cabin. I'm just going to renovate it. Turn it into a retreat. Maybe something for local writers or veterans. Something good. Something she would have wanted. He blinked. You're serious? I didn't do all this for revenge, I said. That was just the bonus. The renovations began 3 weeks later. It was a small cabin, but sturdy. Weathered wood, a big stone fireplace, 2 bedrooms, a creaky dock overlooking the lake. The water was still as glass in the early mornings. The kind of place where the world slowed down. I hired a local crew, paid them well, and gave them a timeline. As word got out that I was reviving the old cabin, I started getting emails and letters from people in the town, friends of my grandparents, former fishing buddies of my grandfather, even a librarian who remembered my grandma coming in every Wednesday to check out mystery novels. They all shared stories. Stories I had never heard because I'd never been included in those parts of our family's history. And suddenly, I realized something. This place had been mine long before I owned it on paper. I just never knew it. My parents, meanwhile, had no idea how to handle the shift in power. When they realized I wasn't going to sell the cabin, but was instead keeping it, and not for profit, but for legacy, they didn't know how to react. There were no more threats. No more calls. Just silence. At first, I thought they were regrouping, planning some legal maneuver. But nothing came. A few weeks later, I got a single email from my mom. I hope you know what you're doing. This family is broken because of your choices. I read it once, then deleted it. Because the truth was, the family hadn't broken when I stood up for myself. It broke a long time ago, when they decided I was the background character in Nathan's story. I was just finally rewriting the script. The cabin opened 6 months later. I called it Stillwater House. Quiet name. Fitting. I didn't invite my parents to the opening. I didn't announce it on social media. I just sent a private email to the dozen or so people who had written me letters during the renovation, locals, veterans, old friends of the family. I let them know the cabin was open. Free of charge for weekend stays for anyone who needed a break from life. No ads. No profit. Word spread slowly, quietly. Exactly how I wanted it. Nathan came by once, unannounced. This time, I let him in. We sat by the fireplace, drinking coffee in the silence. After a long while, he said, "You didn't have to go this far." I didn't, I agreed. But it's the only reason anyone paid attention. He looked around the cabin. They still talk about selling it. You know that, right? Dad says you'll get bored and cave eventually. I won't. He nodded, then looked at me. Do you hate me? I thought about that. No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you. And I'm not responsible for fixing who you became. That hurt him. I could see it. But it was the truth. We talked a little longer. About life. About therapy. About how he was trying to build something of his own now. It wasn't much, but I wished him well. Then he left, and I never saw him again. 3 years have passed since then. Stillwater House has quietly become a little haven. People come and go. Some leave notes. Some leave nothing. But the silence here? It's different. It's peaceful. Not like the silence I used to know. As for my parents, I haven't spoken to them since that last email. They tried sending a Christmas card once. I sent it back, unopened. It's not that I'm bitter. It's that I've learned what it costs to keep letting people take from you just because they share your blood. And I'm done paying that price. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was measured, thoughtful, controlled. And it ended not with fire, but with peace. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming untouchable. And I am. Now, they can't ignore me. They can't use me. And they can't rewrite the story